Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of Crit Hit Reviews with your host, Arlyeon. On today's episode, I'll be talking about developer Super Scary Snake's action roguelite, Black Future 88. Welcome to a world where the bombs have dropped, reducing civilization to a burned out shell in their wake. Skymelt, the living tower, now reigns above the ashes, and you are amongst those brave or reckless enough to challenge it. Welcome to the Black Future. Honestly, I can't even be accused of really taking any sort of artistic license with the story, given that beyond the intro movie and a few lines on the Steam page, you're not actually given a specific motivation for why you're challenging Skymelt. But then, it's not really the most story-heavy experience, eschewing most of all that in favor of Rule of Cool, which is probably why they have all your run-throughs start off with the most dynamic of entrances, ramming a subway train through the wall. I approve, I really do. That said, I would like more insight into things beyond what I could parse from enemy descriptions in the codex. And you're not provided much in the way of a satisfying resolution either. That said, whilst the lore and its ultimate culmination may leave something to be desired, the journey to get there is something else entirely. See, Black Future is a frequently frantic run-and-gun roguelite, which sees you gradually ascending the Skymelt Tower while doing your best to avoid getting slaughtered by synth heads and trashed by traps. As per roguey tropes, you'll be faced with a different permutation of the tower to explore with every playthrough, but that's not the only capricious obstacle to contend with. See, Skymelt lives up to its moniker of the living tower by using money, ammo, and other items you leave unattended or drop down pits to upgrade itself for the run, gradually acquiring such hellish abilities as increasing the amount of enemies you'll encounter, unleashing hunter mini-bosses to beat you down, upgrading traps, and other odds and ends. Which, in your quest to deny it resources, can certainly lend itself to forcing you to reckless situations at times. But perhaps the most stressful factor built into its formula is the simple addition of the deadlock timer. Which is to say, for reasons which are not entirely explained, you only have 18 minutes to live before your heart arbitrarily explodes in your chest. Dramatic. And really, the game is already a fairly lethal display, but the additional pressure provided by the deadlock timer amplifies things massively, as it only serves to further feed into that sense of reckless desperation that's already inherent in its systems. I can't count the number of times I felt incredibly stressed because I was watching the timer simmer down while searching for shops, secret portals to find, or perk machines. And perks are great. I won't lie, they provide some interesting abilities for your given run-through. Whether it's the normal varieties, the cursed variants, or the boss cores you get from laying down the beats on the various wardens, they can provide some really interesting abilities that can prove to be absolutely clutch. Hell, they even play a central role in the Secretive Synergy system, which grants all new hidden perks and weapons to players who manage to acquire the right combination of the former, unleashing a new height of destructiveness. But there's a cost, and it's the fact that each use of the perk stations or shrines that you find around the map takes anywhere from 25 seconds to a minute of your deadlock time. Which means even as you accrue more power, you'll find yourself drawing ever closer to instantaneous death. And if you really like living dangerously, there's even some weapons that can use your deadlock time as ammunition, so you can hurtle towards a cardiac crisis at breakneck speeds. And for those attentive listeners, I definitely said curse there. See, there's both perks and weapons which carry a dangerous downside to acquiring them, as they provide a cumulative chance for empowered versions of both normal enemies and bosses to replace their vanilla counterparts. And whilst they drop more dosh when you murder them, they're generally much tankier and more damaging, which can easily result in a ruined run, especially since there's no way of shedding curses. Not that there's really any shortage of ways to die. Hell, I haven't even mentioned the chems yet, which are mostly short-term buffs that provide the player a temporary extra health, with the exception of blood thinners, which provide permanent extra health. These are awesome to acquire during your runs, save that they can also give you blood poisoning, which taints one of your health cells, which causes your blood to ignite if the afflicted cell gets damaged. Whoops. Still, there is a silver lining to getting murdered. There's a lot you gradually unlock in the tower as you progress through playthroughs, giving your scores converted into experience towards leveling. That's in air quotes, but which in turn unlocks new weapons and perks to find, and even characters. Though, a number of the characters you'll need to find within the tower itself. I also feel compelled to add that leveling also allows Skymelt access to new hazards to throw at you, so it's not all smooth sailing. And while sparse, there are ways to recover chunks of deadlock time. One-time stations that trade health for time are an option, as is finding a chrono consumable from side tasks or even purchasing it from shops when you're a high enough level and have enough money. And yet I found the most important factor was getting the hang of the various characters at your disposal. Each one has their own distinct starting weapon, passive traits, and in several cases, the active trait to slow time and speed up your deadlock time countdown. Sigrist, for instance, starts with a cursed sword that gets stronger with more curses, a higher ammo cap, and the ability to attach any weapon he picks up to the drones you can rarely find. Siu, on the other hand, you can't see this, but I'm squinting. She starts with a blood infection, which puts her potentially at risk of her blood immediately igniting. Heck, I mean, there's other bits, but I always get caught on that. I mean, yes, you can buy more chems for cheaper when your blood's infected, but also, your blood's infected. So, once I managed to get a hang of them, I was even able to reach the climactic final battle of the game, where my reward was the loop, which is more or less a new game plus that sends you back in time to the base of the tower, albeit with your remaining time, harder versions of the enemy, way more of them to deal with, and your choice of 2 powerful buffs, which come at the cost of randomly losing 3 of your current ones. What's more, your encounters with the ensuing bosses begin to force the choice of gaining time in exchange for losing buffs, so you begin to noticeably lose power and flexibility even as your enemies flourish as you progress further. And clearing this doesn't lead to a true end, but rather drops you into another loop, where you can expect your teeth to be kicked in even more. For those looking for other odds and ends to do, there are a few options. For one thing, there's the daily challenge, which starts players off as a set character and with a fixed set of perks and weaponry to try and earn a higher score than other folks. That said, I feel the biggest game changer was its co-op mode, which mostly felt uncooperative at times. Because walking into secret rooms occasionally kickstarted PvP, where the reward was robbing your friend of their perks. It's definitely a ruined friendship flavor of co-op. That said, I could definitely appreciate that for the cost of some of your time and health, you could get them back into the fight again. Also, it was rather interesting that there was an option of downloading them into the drones. The relative rarity does make this a tricky option to rely on, but it really shines with Sigrist's ability to tinker a different weapon onto those drones, and it's also incredibly funny because there's no way for them to stop being a drone once they are. Right. So, first off, I'd like to mention that Black Future benefits from having an absolutely fantastic soundtrack that accompanies the game. It also goes along with its aesthetic beautifully, and keeps you pumped as you ascend the tower over the bullet-riddled bodies of your foes. It also allows you to freely flick between songs in case you have favorites or just hate certain tracks or are just tired of one right now, which is great. That said, I really need to give some kudos on the voice lines. The narrator/announcer is creepy as all get out, and some of the stuff he said seems to allude to things of just a more dark nature, to the extent that it had eldritch abominations from beyond the ken of human understanding suddenly making themselves known near the end of the game. A reasonable expectation. Like, I wouldn't have been surprised. Probably just dead. It didn't happen, but I was expecting. Anyways, it's some great and spooky stuff, and it really helps to make the experience stand out. On a visual level, Black Future is just absolutely fabulous. It manages to capture a sort of rave-like ambience for its combat, or the sort of feeling that might be right at home in certain segments of Blade Runner, albeit with more bullets flying around. Honestly, it's really pretty to look at, especially when you establish a sense of flow. That said, it can be extremely distracting at times, and can be sometimes a little overwhelming when your screen is covered with projectiles. I found this really notable in combat, but it became impossible to ignore when I was using night weapons, which swap your place with the target since it completely disoriented me. I'll also admit that it's rather difficult to see the flammable gases at times, which... those are pretty lethal, to be fair, since that stuff can just outright murder you from full health. And this brings us to the conclusion, and after all my rambling, I'll try and be nice to keep this concise. Hey, rhymes. And honestly, I like Black Future 88 a lot. It embraces the idea of a challenge with a generally unapologetic manner, and yet was still courteous enough to include a toggleable assist mode for folks who don't like being smeared into paste. I found myself returning to pick it up again and again, discovering more ways to tackle Sky Melt and unlock new weapons and perks along the way. Plus, the process of discovering synergies was always a blast, as well as learning new ways to advance the game, like holding on to one of the guns that shoots money so that the ammo packs would give loot. Honestly, my biggest nitpicks with the title are the visual aspects can make it a little bit difficult, and the sheer antagonistic and trolly aspect of the multiplayer, but I'd say that I'd ultimately rate Black Future 88 as a strong hit. It might not be flawless, but it's really damn solid. Anywho, thanks for tuning in. If you agree, disagree, or just have something to say to me, feel free to comment. And for those interested in more indie reviews, developer interviews, podcasts, or Monday TTRPG content, hit the subscribe button and the bell so you know there's a new release. There's also a Discord. You can click the link in the banner or the description to become a part of our community, the Crit Hit Cauldron. Lastly, if you'd like to help support our channel, we do have a coffee running now to help supplement funds for our lovely editor, and to make sure we can continue to provide quality content. Again, check the description and the banner for them links. That all said, I'll catch you on the next episode of Crit Hit. Take care till then, folks.